Writing a strong thesis statement. A thesis statement is one of the most important parts of an essay. It lets your reader know not only the topic of your paper, but the specific argument or point that you're making about that topic. The thesis statement is typically 1 or 2 sentences and is generally located at the end of the paper's introduction. In this video, I'll take you through my process of developing a thesis statement, from the not so great ones I began with to the pretty solid one I came up with in the end. I'll also talk about how doing this work to figure out my thesis made planning and writing the whole paper easier in the long run. Let's get started. Recently, I had to write a paper on The Tale of Tales, which is a collection of fairy tales written in Italy in the 1600s. It took me a while to figure out how to come up with an argument about the book, rather just than explaining some aspects of it. Let's take a look at my first 2 attempts, which turned out to be good examples of bad thesis statements. Here were 2 ideas I had at the start of the process. Attempt 1. The Tale of Tales is one of the first collections of literary fairy tales. At the start of my paper journey, I learned this fact about The Tale of Tales, and it seemed like a big deal. Lots of the journal articles I was reading mentioned that the book was the first of its kind. So I wrote this, but I immediately got stuck. It was the first, okay, but so what? What I learned here is that a thesis statement is not just a fact about the paper topic, because a fact cannot be argued. There's nothing to build on. It just is what it is. Here was my second thesis attempt. Giambattista Basile, the author of The Tale of Tales, included many fantastic and animal characters in his work. Now, this one is a tiny bit more specific than the previous example because it mentions the kinds of characters present in the text, but it doesn't say anything about them. It doesn't propose a possible reason for why the author included animal characters in the book. It doesn't say anything about what kinds of fantastic elements there are, or anything like that. It doesn't go into enough detail, and that's why this is another example of a weak thesis statement. The statement is too vague. A strong thesis statement presents an argument, theory, or opinion about the paper topic that can be analyzed and defended with the use of supporting evidence. Supporting evidence could be examples from the text itself that support your ideas. Secondary sources, such as articles from academic journals that other people have written about the topic, can also provide supporting evidence. Think of it this way: the thesis statement tells, and the supporting evidence shows or exemplifies. With all that in mind, here is the thesis I ended up using for my paper. In The Tale of Tales, Basile strategically has members of the nobility speak in low linguistic registers, while animals and peasants speak eloquently, in order to critique the structures of, and individuals in, the society of his time. Remember, the thesis statement comes at the end of the introduction. I began the intro with a funny scene from the book as a hook to grab the reader's attention. I then provided some historical background on the book and the author, and briefly listed some major themes and stylistic elements of the text. I made sure to mention the author's use of varying linguistic registers so that I could finally, easily transition into my thesis statement. Here's the thesis statement again. As you can see, I've put the 3 main parts of it in 3 different colors. Each different colored part of the thesis statement could be 1 or more body paragraphs, depending on how long your paper needs to be. Each different colored part of the thesis statement delineates clear subtopics to be discussed and expanded upon. For the paragraphs where I talk about the pink part, or where members of the nobility speak in low registers, I'd include examples from the text, my analysis or reading of those examples, and some supporting evidence from secondary sources. Then, I'll do the same thing with the blue and green parts. For the green part in particular, there is quite a bit of analyzing and synthesizing to do, considering it's the part where I try to bring it all together before concluding. Another quick note. These topics should appear in the paper in the same order you present them in your thesis statement. Your thesis statement is kind of like a roadmap. Don't let your readers stray. Sometimes ideas come to you right away. You read a book or watch a film, and immediately you have so many things to say about it. In those instances, thesis statements can come fairly easily. Other times, however, the task of forming a good thesis statement is really daunting. That was the case for me with this paper. What helped me figure it out was doing some reading. Okay, a lot of reading. Not only did my professor want me to consult and cite a lot of secondary sources, but I didn't know that much about the author or his time period before starting the project. I had to take the time to fill in gaps in my knowledge. During the course of informing myself about the book's historical context, I started to pick up on the fact that the author was kind of making fun of a lot of things and people he knew at the time. My thesis eventually came from making that connection. Take notes, write down quotes from both the primary and secondary sources that seem important, and you'll find yourself starting to put things together. You're now prepared to start drafting a strong thesis statement. For more videos and writing guides, click the link below.